the one line in the sand was Aditya Chopra said, "Great, do what you want, we'll give you what you need, but I'm not appearing on camera." When I showed it to Adi, I think he could see that for a docu-series that was sort of about the legacy of his father and of his family, his presence was really vital. It was the interview with Rishi Kapoor that really will stay with me, I think, forever. During our interview, I would have never imagined that a month later we would lose him. Definitely Shah Rukh. Honestly, what was really amazing about talking to him was he was like a historian himself, of Indian cinema.
Today we're speaking with director Smriti Mundhra, the woman behind The Romantics, a docu-series that everyone's talking about, and it celebrates the legacy of Yash Chopra films. Hi, thank you so much for joining us on The Quint.
Of course, happy to be here.
The million-dollar questions that everyone's asking: how did you manage to get the man in the seat? I mean, I've been a part of this industry for over 15 years, but we've never got the chance to even interview him once. How did you manage to do that?
Well, it wasn't an easy process, I'll say that for sure. It definitely took a lot of time, a lot of convincing. Initially when this whole process started, I pitched the studio an idea of making a docuseries. I just wanted access to all of the archives. And I knew that, if I had access to all of the archives and their blessing to make the series, then, because of all the love and regard people have for Yash Chopra and the industry, that people would be willing to talk to me, But the one line in the sand was Aditya Chopra said, "Great, do what you want, we'll give you what you need, but I'm not appearing on camera." So little by little, as we were filming and as we were putting the documentary together, we were having conversations for context, for background of the history of the studio, his father's legacy, his own legacy, and all of that. And so every time I would take it one step further. Okay, why don't we just record audio? Just for you, just have it for your archives for later. Okay, well, the camera's here. We'll just switch the camera on and get something on camera. Just again, we don't have to use it in the documentary. We can just, have it for your own personal archives. And then eventually I just took the leap to start editing his interview into the series. Right. And when I showed it to him, this was after the series had been fully edited. And when I showed it to Adi, I think he could see that for a docuseries that was sort of about the legacy of his father and of his family, his presence was really vital. And eventually that's what convinced him.
So you didn't even ask him, you just said, "I'm going to take this leap and see how it goes." What if he said no?
Oh, we would have been in a lot of trouble. A lot of months of wasted work of editing. I think, the one thing that I've learned about Aditya Chopra is that he has a lot of reverence for the creative process and the creative integrity of anything that he takes on. So I think once he could see how vital creatively his presence and his voice was in the series, it was an easier sell.
Was it difficult or challenging to get him to open up?
Actually, no. Once he committed to it, and especially because I think he knew, until the very last, thing when we were talking, it was really, that footage was kind of under his control, and I kept saying, "It's just for your archives, it's just for your archives." So no, he wasn't. He was very open. Nothing was off limits. Nothing was, he didn't ask. There was no limitations in terms of what I could ask, what he would talk about. And he was really, willing to talk about everything. And
so the trailer starts with this question that says, "Do you like the term Bollywood?" I have to tell you this, I think it's a very recent shift that I have noticed while also doing interviews, and I have started saying Indian film industry. I think just a year, and I've seen a lot of actors also start saying it. But you started shooting this a while back. So what really prompted you to ask this question?
The idea of labels is interesting. And, how do we define ourselves versus how the world looks at us? Right. And that was sort of the idea for that question. I'm not sure exactly why, I don't use the term Bollywood as much now that I know how disfavored it is. I always had a little something inside me every time I used that term, and a little something that I was like, why should, the films of my culture be defined in context of the films of a totally different culture, and why is it assumed that Hollywood is the dominant, cinema culture of the world, when in fact we have such a as historic and as rich, and prolific of a cinema culture. And then as people started responding and saying, actually, we don't like that term, that's when it became a consistent theme across. I would ask everyone that we interviewed how they felt about that term. And it was a mixed response, but I think for the most part, people didn't like it.
Yeah, you have interviewed so many big stars, right? So while Amitabh Bachchan, Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, Salman Khan, and the list is endless, also Rishi Kapoor, is there an anecdote or a memory that stayed stayed with you from the sets while you were filming this?
It was the interview with Rishi Kapoor that really will stay with me, I think, forever. We knew at the time that he was ill. He had been having health struggles. But from what I experienced of him on set during our interview, I would have never imagined that a month later we would lose him, because he looked great. You know, he was full of life. He was so charming, so eager to talk, you know, and so eager to reminisce. And in hindsight, you know, I think maybe, I don't know if there was something going on there, or some sort of sense of mortality or something, you know, in his mind. But especially in talking about his relationship with Yash Chopra and the films that they made together and everything, there was just a feeling of reminiscing, you know, and he was like, there was no time limit, you know, he was just happy to talk as long as I wanted to talk. He was eager to be there, you know, of course, you know, Neetaji, his wife, was also there with him, and it just was like an absolutely lovely experience. It was one of the best interviews I think I've ever done.
Did you have like a fan moment on the sets?
Oh, definitely Shah Rukh Khan. And I would also say Ranbir Kapoor. He's one of my favorite actors of the more recent generation. So it was exciting to see him, and he walked in with his like Nespresso coffee, looking very like dapper and, you know, very suave. So Ranveer Singh also like just comes in with such a force of energy. The second I could hear his boombox down the hall walking towards the set, the location where we filmed, and I told my cinematographer immediately, turn the camera on, start rolling the camera, because something exciting is going to happen as soon as he enters the frames.
Everyone has a Shah Rukh Khan story, and I believe you have one too while filming this.
He's someone who has experienced so much of this industry, for better or for worse. Honestly, what was really amazing about talking to him was he was like a historian himself, you know, of Indian cinema. And he had so much to share, not only of his experience as an actor and as a star, but also just as a fan of cinema and growing up watching films, and how he came to be a part of the industry, and how films really shaped him in his childhood. And so that was really exciting, just to talk to him as a fan, you know, and not just as like a global megastar.
What is your earliest memory of watching a Yash Raj film?
I saw Chandani when I was a kid. I was sort of dazzled by it when I first saw it, but I think only when I watched it later in life, you know, and especially in the process of making the series, when I watched it probably a dozen times, did I really appreciate, you know, the artistry of it. So, you know, I grew some new appreciation for it, you know, in recent years. But definitely, I think the film that kind of shook the earth for me, you know, in my upbringing in my youth was DDLJ.
Oh, of course. I think all of us can say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Make a docu-series on someone who's had more than 1,000 of films that he's directed. How challenging was it for you as a director to put all of that in a 4-part docu-series?
Oh, it was the toughest challenge. And I'm sure that once people see the series, there's going to be all kinds of tweets about how could you not include this film or that film. It's really difficult. I mean, he has such a illustrious filmography. I think we just had to choose, you know, I could have done a 10-part series. I think, you know, for a 4-part series, we had to choose the films that really were iconic, but also reflected something and informed us something about the time in which they were made and released. Telling us something about the culture, you know, and about the cinema history.
Is there something about Yash Raj films that shaped the way you look at Indian cinema?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think just the whole aesthetic. That was the only aesthetic I knew of Hindi films was, you know, the beautiful, you know, heroine with the sari and the chiffon saris and Switzerland and, you know, all of that. And only it was later in life, you know, and especially through the course of making the series, that I recognize how specific that was, you know, to Yash Chopra, and how influential that aesthetic was, you know, across Hindi cinema, especially, you know, for a period of time. Yash Chopra and Hindi cinema were synonymous. I didn't know how to tell one apart from the other.
If you had to define the legacy of YRF films in a sentence, how would you do it?
Audience first. That's something that's in common with Yash Chopra and Aditya Chopra and all of the filmmakers that now work, you know, within the studio, is they have absolute respect and fidelity to the audience. That's their, you know, they make films for an audience.
Do you remember one thing that Aditya Chopra said to you while filming this that kind of stayed with you or kind of represents, say, Yash Raj films?
How much longer do we have to do this with filming the interviews? Are we done yet? Can I get back to work? I will say that people may have an idea that because he's a very private person, that he doesn't have much to say, and the opposite is true.
Was there an actor or somebody who was a part of Vira Films that you wanted in the docu-series but you couldn't make it?
Oh, there's many people. I think we tried to get as many people as we could. Of course, like scheduling is a challenge, and
it looks like a mammoth task.
Hats off to the producing team for coordinating all of that. But yeah, I mean, I think I could have probably talked to 50 more people, in the series. Aishwarya Rai would have been amazing to have her perspective, and she's got such a global perspective, as an ambassador for Hindi cinema around the world. Preeti Zinta, of course, who was in, one of Yash's most seminal films. So many people, but maybe let's see, maybe there'll be an opportunity, to do more episodes or do it again. So.
Thank you so much, and good luck to many more, Smriti. Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful to meet you.
Same here. Thanks.